Why Canada's provinces and U.S. states look so different. The United States and Canada, two North American neighbors sharing a vast border and many cultural similarities, have taken starkly different approaches to organizing their territories. Canada's map is defined by 10 expansive provinces, some larger than entire European nations, while the U.S. is carved into 50 smaller states, each with its own identity and political weight. This contrast isn't a mere quirk of history, it's a reflection of geography, population dynamics, political systems, and the unique ways each nation expanded across the continent. So, what would the United States look like if it had been divided into 10 provinces like Canada? Before we reimagine the U.S. with a Canadian-style map, let's explore the reasons behind their divergent paths and how these shape their modern boundaries. The roots of Canada's vast provinces. When you look at a map of Canada, the first thing that stands out is the sheer scale of its provinces. Quebec, covering over 1.5 million square kilometers, is larger than all but one European country, Russia, which is arguably more Asian than European. Ontario, British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan are similarly massive, each sprawling across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. Even Canada's smaller provinces, like New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, are substantial compared to many U.S. states. Only Prince Edward Island, a tiny outlier, bucks this trend. This pattern of large provinces is no accident. It's a direct result of Canada's geography, population distribution, and historical expansion. One of the primary drivers of Canada's large provinces is its sparse population, particularly in the northern regions. Unlike the United States, where population centers are spread across the country, much of Canada's landmass remains thinly populated. For instance, northern British Columbia, a region larger than many countries, is home to just 400,000 people. Northern Manitoba is even less populated, with roughly 200,000 residents scattered across a vast landscape. These low population densities meant there was little need to create numerous smaller administrative units. Instead, Canada opted for large provinces that could efficiently govern expansive, lightly settled territories. The historical context of Canada's expansion further explains this structure. After Confederation in 1867, Canada acquired enormous territories from the Hudson's Bay Company, including Rupert's Land and the Northwest Territories, which encompassed much of what is now Western Canada. Rather than immediately dividing these lands into smaller units, the Canadian government organized them into a single, massive Northwest Territories. Over time, as settlement increased and agricultural opportunities emerged, new provinces were carved out. Manitoba, for example, was established in 1870 following the Metis-led Red River Resistance, which demanded local governance. Later, in 1905, Alberta and Saskatchewan were created from the Northwest Territories to accommodate growing prairie populations and agricultural development. These new provinces were intentionally large, reflecting the vast plains and the need to manage dispersed populations effectively. This approach contrasts sharply with the United States, where territorial division was driven by different priorities. Canada's expansion was less about political maneuvering and more about establishing governance over immense, often underpopulated regions. The Canadian government sought to encourage immigration and development while maintaining centralized control, resulting in fewer, larger provinces that could adapt to the realities of the landscape. The U.S. model, small states, big politics. The United States, with its 50 states, presents a very different picture. From its origins as 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast, the U.S. expanded westward through a series of acquisitions, treaties, and conquests, including the Louisiana Purchase, 1803, the Oregon Territory, 1846, and the Mexican Cession, 1848. Unlike Canada, which maintained large territorial units, the U.S. systematically subdivided its new territories into smaller states. This process wasn't just about geography, it was deeply tied to the U.S. political system and the quest for power. A key factor in the U.S. approach was the structure of its government. Under the U.S. Constitution, every state, regardless of size or population, is granted 2 senators in the U.S. Senate. This equal representation gave smaller states disproportionate influence, creating a strong incentive to carve out new states from acquired territories. Each new state could shift the balance of power in Congress, particularly during contentious periods like the lead-up to the Civil War, when debates over slavery dominated politics. For example, the admission of Nevada as a state in 1864, despite its tiny population of around 10,000, was a strategic move to bolster anti-slavery representation in the Senate and support President Lincoln's re-election. The Electoral College, which determines U.S. presidential elections, added another layer of motivation. Each state's electoral votes are based on its total congressional representation, senators plus representatives, so creating new states directly impacted presidential elections. This political calculus led to a proliferation of states, each designed to maximize representation and influence. Territories like the Northwest Territory, the Louisiana Purchase, and the Oregon Territory were gradually divided into smaller units, each becoming a state with its own government and political clout. In contrast, Canada's political system offered no such incentives. Canadian provinces don't have equal representation in the federal government, and there was no equivalent to the Electoral College driving the creation of new provinces. As a result, Canada's growth focused on managing vast, sparsely populated lands rather than maximizing political representation. This fundamental difference explains why the US has 50 states while Canada has just 10 provinces. Reimagining the US with 10 Canadian-style provinces. Now, let's embark on a thought experiment. What if the United States had followed Canada's model and divided itself into 10 large provinces instead of 50 states? To make this realistic, we'll align the population of each new province with a proportion of Canada's population represented by its provinces. For example, Ontario accounts for about 38% of Canada's population, so the corresponding US province will have a similar share of the US population. We'll also consider geographical and cultural factors to ensure the provinces feel cohesive. Here's how the United States might look with 10 Canadian-style provinces. Great Lakes Province. Inspired by Ontario, the Great Lakes Province is the largest in both area and population, covering approximately 1.9 million square kilometers. It encompasses the Great Lakes states, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, parts of the Midwest, Indiana, Minnesota, and much of the Northeast, New York, Pennsylvania. With a population of about 130 million, 38% of the U.S. total, it's the economic and cultural powerhouse of the country. Major cities like New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Detroit anchor this province, making it a hub of industry, finance, and innovation. Its vast size and population mirror Ontario's dominance in Canada, but its urban centers give it a uniquely American flavor. Dixie Province. Modeled on Quebec, Dixie spans 1.1 million square kilometers across the southeastern U.S., including states like Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Louisiana. With a population of 70 million, 20% of the U.S. total, it's a cultural melting pot, blending Southern traditions with influences from African American, Creole, and Hispanic communities. Cities like Atlanta, Miami, New Orleans, and Nashville define its vibrant identity. Like Quebec, Dixie stands out for its distinct cultural heritage, from Cajun cuisine to Southern music. Pacifica Province. Drawing inspiration from British Columbia, Pacifica covers 900,000 square kilometers along the West Coast, encompassing California, Oregon, and Washington. With 48 million people, 14% of the U.S. population, it's a hub of technology and culture, led by coastal cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle. Pacifica shares British Columbia's blend of urban sophistication and natural beauty, with its rugged coastline and towering mountains. Lone Star Province. Mirroring Alberta's oil-rich and conservative character, Lone Star spans 1.3 million square kilometers across Texas, Oklahoma, and Arizona. Its 40 million residents, 12% of the U.S. population, make it a major economic player driven by energy, agriculture, and urban growth. Cities like Houston, Dallas, Austin, and Phoenix form its core, with the arid deserts and plains shaping its identity as a warm, resource-rich region. Plains Province. Inspired by Manitoba, Plains covers 1.5 million square kilometers across the Great Plains, including Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado. With just 12 million people, 3.5% of the U.S. population, it's a sparsely populated region dominated by agriculture and open spaces. Urban centers like Denver and Omaha provide focal points, but the province's vast prairies and rural communities define its character. Rockies Province. Modeled on Saskatchewan, Rockies spans 900,000 square kilometers across Idaho, Montana, and Utah. Its 10 million residents, 3% of the U.S. population, rely heavily on agriculture and natural resources. Cities like Boise and Salt Lake City lead the province, which serves as a breadbasket for the nation, much like Saskatchewan's role in Canada. New England Province. Taking cues from Nova Scotia, New England is the smallest mainland province at 40,000 square kilometers, covering Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. With 8 million people, 2.5% of the U.S. population, it's densely populated and education-rich, boasting universities like Harvard and Yale. Boston and Providence are its key cities, making it a cultural and intellectual hub. Appalachia Province. Like New Brunswick, Appalachia covers 130,000 square kilometers across Vermont, New Hampshire, and parts of Pennsylvania. Its 6 million residents, 2% of the U.S. population, live in a largely rural region with small towns like Burlington and Manchester. Known for its forests and mountains, Appalachia offers a quieter, nature-focused identity. Cascadia Province. Inspired by Newfoundland and Labrador, Cascadia spans 1.6 million square kilometers, including Alaska and parts of Washington. With 7 million people, 2% of the U.S. population, it's a cold, rugged province defined by its wet climate and remote landscapes. Seattle dominates the southern region, while Anchorage anchors the Alaskan portion. Hawaii Province. Modeled on Prince Edward Island, Hawaii is the smallest province at 16,000 square kilometers, with 1.5 million people, 0.5% of the U.S. population. An isolated island chain, it's centered on Honolulu and defined by its tropical climate and unique cultural blend, much like PEI's distinct island identity. The broader implications. Reimagining the U.S. with 10 provinces highlights the profound impact of historical and political choices on geography. Canada's large provinces reflect a centralized approach to managing vast, underpopulated lands, while the U.S.'s smaller states were shaped by a drive for political representation and power. In this alternate U.S., provinces like Great Lakes and Lone Star would dominate economically and demographically, while smaller provinces like Hawaii and New England would carve out unique niches. The absence of a Senate-driven or Electoral College-driven incentive to create new states would have fundamentally altered the U.S.'s development, likely leading to a more centralized governance model akin to Canada's. This thought experiment also raises questions about identity. Would Americans in the Great Lakes province feel as connected to New York City as to Chicago? Would Dixie's diverse cultures coalesce into a unified provincial identity? The answers depend on how these provinces would balance local traditions with broader national unity. Protecting your digital territory. Just as nations organize their physical territories, individuals must manage their digital footprints. In today's world, personal information like names, addresses, and phone numbers is often collected by data brokers and sold without consent. Services like Delete Me help reclaim your privacy by removing your data from thousands of websites. To learn more, visit joindemi.com or scan the QR code if available. Taking control of your digital boundaries is as important as understanding the boundaries that shape our nations. Conclusion. The contrast between Canada's vast provinces and the U.S.'s numerous states reflects deep differences in history, geography, and politics. By reimagining the U.S. with 10 Canadian-style provinces, we see how a different approach to territorial organization could have reshaped the nation's identity and power dynamics. From the bustling Great Lakes province to the tropical Hawaii province, this alternate map offers a fresh perspective on a familiar country. What do you think of this reimagined United States? Would you prefer 10 provinces or 50 states? Share your thoughts.